Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a great turnout. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We know you all have busy lives, and my name's John Davis. I'm the town manager. We'll be introducing some staff here. We have council members in the audience I want to recognize, starting with former council member, Ms. Deb Fudge, right here. I have Mayor Reynosa here this evening. We have Vice Mayor Tanya Potter. We have council member Mike Wall, and I believe I saw council member J.B. Lee, and of course, Sam Salmon in the background. Tonight on the team that's going to be talking to you and taking you through the presentation tonight, we have Tim Ricard, Economic Development Manager, Olivia Lehman, who's our Parks and Recreation Director. We have Nick Walker, who's our Administrative Services Director. And we have Lauren Burgess, who is the Senior Management Analyst in the Town Manager's Office. And of course, we have Irene Camacho-Werba, the Town Clerk there. We also have other directors and staff here in the back, and hopefully you get to mingle and meet with them as the night goes on. I wanted to take a moment again to welcome you all, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't been here much before, we can definitely get some chairs for you gentlemen in the back if you want to sit down. The restrooms are right outside. We're going to schedule to be here for 90 minutes, and we'll try to respect your time and get done in that period of time. But we will be here after to talk with anybody that wants to stick around. So let's go through the agenda really quick for this evening. So we're going to give a town budget overview. In that overview, we'll talk about an analysis of some revenue options that we're looking at for the future. There will be information about the topic of the night, the potential of a local sales tax, and some information there about how we think that could affect the town and what other municipalities in the area are doing. We have an outreach and feedback form that we want to make sure you all get a snapshot of, or at least the information so you can take that home and do that later if you haven't done it. Thank you to those of you that have done it so far. And then we'll have some clarifying questions after we give the presentation. Anything in the presentation that you would like to be clarified or is still confusing, whether it be the video that we'd like to share with you tonight or the PowerPoint, we'll try to clear that up. We'd like to do a breakout group exercise. We're at our tables together. We have a few questions that each group can think about, brainstorm on, and provide answers. And we would like to then report out on those and try to find some common themes from the different groups tonight. We do have a good turnout here, so we're going to be pressed for time, but we're going to power through and get to it. So then we'll wrap up, and as I said, we can stick around after to clarify anything that we don't get clarified in the presentation tonight. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our video.
Windsor's budget lays out the town's roadmap for a successful community, outlining the path forward to achieving Windsor's strategic priorities. The budget designates the funding needed to provide the highest quality services to the community. Several different sources of revenue make up the overall budget, many of which are restricted to specific uses. The general fund is the main operating fund for the town, resourced through sales taxes, property taxes, transient occupancy tax on overnight stays, and the franchise and permit licenses and fees. The general fund is not restricted in its use and supports services throughout Windsor, such as police and public safety, road and park maintenance, town services, and recreational programs. Over the years, Windsor has maintained a strong financial foundation with balanced budgets and healthy reserves supporting town services. However, growing costs are straining the town's budget and financial future. In the current 2025 to 27 budget, the town made over $6 million in cuts to operational costs, reduced 3 police officer positions, held vacant staff positions open, and deferred major maintenance projects. Even after these reductions, nearly $8 million in reserves was needed just to maintain existing service levels. This reliance on reserves is not sustainable. Without new revenue, the budget will fall short by $8 to $10 million beginning in 2027, risking further reductions in public safety services, city staffing, recreational programs, and community events, while deferred maintenance on roads and buildings would continue to grow. In an effort to address these needs, town leadership is exploring options for additional revenue. Residents are encouraged to join in on the conversation as we work together to keep Windsor thriving for years to come. Visit townofwindsor.ca.gov/future to learn more about Windsor's budget and how you can get involved.
Good evening, Nick Walker, Administrative Services Director. Pleasure to present here tonight. So I have a few slides here to basically give the video some context with the numbers. So we're jumping right into the fiscal forecast. What you see here is the town's reserves over time. Reserves are the accumulation of revenues over expense over a period of time. You can see 2018, 2019, 2020, it was bouncing along pretty smoothly. We have a 25% reserve goal, and then something happened in 2020, and it was the pandemic, and you can just kind of see the chaos that was created. So throughout the next couple slides, I'll refer to this period of time as pandemic or post-pandemic economics, and I'll refer to 2020 as kind of like the baseline. You can see the dotted vertical line there. So everything to the left of the dotted vertical line is real time that's already passed, and those numbers are official or audited, really actual. And then everything to the right of the dotted line is forecast. So some of the challenges that the town of Windsor faces are not unique to the town of Windsor. Municipalities around the county and around the state are dealing with some of these same things. Stagnant revenue growth, when we basically normalize the revenue growth over the last 5 years, taking out one-time or post-pandemic abnormalities, it's about 4% a year growth, which isn't terrible. However, the next 4 bullets there have created sort of a problem. CPI, right, the general index that we measure inflation with, also increased by 4%. The construction index increased 6.7%. The contract for the public safety with the Sonoma County Sheriffs increased 32% over that period of time, and that's after we reduced the 3 positions. And insurance costs actually increased 160% over those 5 years. So while 4% growth is great in revenue, it was not enough to keep up with costs. Go back really quick. The other thing that it's not new to post-pandemic, and it's not unique to the town of Windsor, but unfunded mandates have been an issue for local government all for a long time. The state, in their infinite wisdom, has really great ideas, and they passed legislation and decided it's best for the towns or the cities or other municipalities to enact kind of what their really good ideas are. And so there's costs to that, right? And so they're unfunded in the fact that they say, you shall do this, but we're not going to give you any money for it. And so it's really hard to quantify how much state mandates cost. Just a short list of that we've created are, election law, public safety training requirements, environmental requirements, and affordable housing. Really quick, just a snapshot of what makes up the general fund revenue. Property tax. I was talking about the 4% growth in general fund revenue. Property tax has been the best source of that increase over the years. And a very stable source. Between property tax and franchise fees, we have about over a half of our revenue in the general fund that is extremely stable. Sales tax, TOT, and the other revenue, which is interest and fees for services, is volatile, and it's heavily dependent on economic fluctuations, housing markets, those types of things. So, barring a housing bubble crash like in 2008, which we don't foresee, property taxes is extremely stable, and having 50% is a really strong position for a town, for a town's general fund. This slide is the cost of the general fund. These boxes represent the services the town offers. We know that the police and public safety services are provided through the contract we have with the Sonoma County Sheriff. You know, but the rest of these boxes represent the people and the goods that are required to provide these services to the community. So local government is a service-based industry, right? So people, employees, provide these services to the public. And so salaries and benefits are a huge part of what the general fund pays for. And in 2020, the general fund's portion of salaries and benefits as cost goes was 28%. In 2025, that number is still 28%. The total costs of the general fund have increased, so the total cost of salaries and benefits have increased, but the percentage of the total of their share of the general fund has remained relatively stable, which is super important because there is, right, we all know that the cost of living has increased for everybody over the last 5 years. Healthcare markets have changed, not in the positive way over the last 5 years, and the cost associated with pension benefits also continues to rise. Next slide. So as the video showed, the town is trying to make an effort to resolve this issue. Over the last budget cycle, so now we're talking about the 25 to 27 budget, we did make $6 million worth of real cuts to the general fund budget. Reduction of the 3 police officers, and then really 10% across the board for all of the departments. And that includes supplies, contractual services, training, all those types of costs that help support the staff. In addition to that $6 million, we deferred maintenance projects, which saves us $1 today. But we don't know how much that's going to cost in the future when we end up having to complete these projects. So while it saves money today, it's hard to say how much it's going to cost in the future, and we need to find a resolution to make sure that we're not deferring maintenance for too long. And so here's the summary, right? We started off the budget cycle with an extremely significant problem. We were able to make the cuts of $6 million, defer the maintenance to get to that final shortfall, which was funded with reserves that from the first slide grew from the one-time revenues we received throughout the pandemic. And that $8 million continues into the future, right? So in the next budget cycle, we will have to address that. And the reserve, using the reserves to fund that shortfall really isn't an option going forward, right? At the end of 27, we're planning to get down to the 25 reserve level. So there's 2 ways to fix a budget problem of this magnitude. We either enhance general fund revenue, or we find additional cuts to balance the budget. And with that, I will turn it over to Tim Ricard.
Thank you, Nick. Tim Ricard, Economic Development Manager for the Town of Windsor. As Nick pointed out, with our budget situation, we have made significant cuts. What we are now trying to look at now is if there are options to increase revenue to help balance that budget. So we went through and we looked at all of the typical mechanisms in which city government uses in order to raise revenue. We really wanted to know who pays the tax, what is the vote required to have that tax, whether that's 50% plus 1 or a 66% threshold. the amount of revenue it would bring to the town on a yearly basis, and then finally the applicability. As we tried to define in those earlier slides, this is a general fund problem, not something that one-time revenue would fix. Slide. So going quickly through this table, these are all of the revenue options that we analyzed. We're starting with transit occupancy tax. Many of you are familiar with this. This is the add-on tax that you pay when you stay at a hotel or an Airbnb. Visitors pay. So revenues are for Windsor of TOT are approximately $2.7 million a year, and each 1% increase would generate roughly $225,000 annually. While a modest increase could supplement revenue, it will not close the deficit that Nick defined. The transit occupancy rate with the county add-on is 14% in Windsor. That any increase would put us very much near the top of that. One thing that we looked at is while the change in TOT rate doesn't really affect consumer behavior, so it's not something that you look at when you're looking at a hotel, when you're going to Santa Barbara, it does really affect group business. So if PG&E was going to book a large block of rooms for their crews to come out, they really do look at those things. And the hotels that we have in Windsor rely heavily on that group business. Next, we looked at business license tax. So currently, Windsor has a business license fee. A fee is legally required to only raise enough revenue to cover the operations needed to assess that fee. A business license tax is a voter-approved add-on in which the businesses of the community are taxed. Those are typically done through gross receipts or by the number of employees. We looked at that, and it would, if we used models similar to Santa Rosa and Petaluma, we'd raise between $500,000 to $1.5 million annually. However, that would be 100% on the backs of our businesses here in Windsor. Next, we looked at property tax increases. So under Prop 13, property tax rates in California are capped at 1% of the property's assessed values, and cities cannot raise this rate in order to fund general fund operations. They could, however, raise them for general obligation bonds, but those are one-time funds usually used to build infrastructure that would not be applicable in this particular case. A parcel tax is very similar. However, it's a flat rate, say $100 per property. Again, that is usually used for general obligation bonds and not ongoing revenue. Finally, we looked at utility users tax. This is an add-on tax that would go onto, say, your cell phone bill or your water bill, a percentage. Looking at that, typically 3 to 5%, we could raise between 1 and 2.5 million annually. However, this would fall 100% on the citizens of Windsor and would really increase their household costs, no matter how they chose to spend their money. So finally, we looked at local transitions and use tax, also commonly known as sales tax. Sales tax is unique because it is paid not only by the residents in that town when they shop, but only when they shop in the town, but also anybody who comes through and shops at our Walmart, dines downtown at Kin, or buys gas on their way through town. They pay that tax. Typically, sales tax are increased incrementally by increments of about 0.25 cents. And historically, they have sunset dates, so whether that's 5, 10, 15, 20 years. While that has historically been the case, most communities now throughout Sonoma County have sales tax with the language until ended by voters. So if structured as a general tax, and that's one thing I wanted to clarify real quick here, you see the difference between the majority and the 2/3. In order for the threshold to be 50% plus 1, any tax has to be structured as a general tax, meaning we can't say that this is going to fund X, Y, and Z. We have to say these funds can be used to fund X, Y, and Z, but we can't be legally obligated to spend them in a certain way. However, We can create a citizens oversight committee that can help the council make sure that these funds are used in a way as approved by the voters. So finally, the council gave us direction to explore up to a 1% local sales tax. A 1% local sales tax would generate $5.5 million annually, enough to close the budget deficit defined by Nick. Next slide, please. So quick breakdown of how current sales tax revenue is generated. So in a theoretical $100 purchase, you would pay $9.25 in Windsor. Of that $9.25, $6 goes to the state, $2.25 goes to the county, and only $1 returns to the town of Windsor. However, any additional local sales tax that is added, 100% of that revenue would come back to the town. Next slide, please. So it's also important to note that sales tax is not applied to many of the items that you need to purchase on a day-to-day basis to live. So your groceries, your utilities, diapers, baby formula, a lot of those things that you buy at Safeway, Oliver's, et cetera, are not taxed, and they would not be subject to any additional local sales tax. Next slide. So I wanted to do a quick breakdown of what the local sales tax rates are in Sonoma County. This slide, so what you see there in the orange is the base rate that applies to everybody in Sonoma County and those in the unincorporated county. That is 9.25%. Every other community in Sonoma County has a local sales tax add-on. Those range from 50 cents in Healdsburg all the way up to $1.25 in Sebastopol. So when you shop in these communities, this is the sales tax rate that you are paying. When you go to Costco in Santa Rosa, you're paying 10%. Next slide. So I also think it's important that we look back at when these communities implemented their local sales tax. Many of these communities enacted these up to 20 years ago, 2004 for Santa Rosa. And these communities have been collecting this additional revenue from both their residents and from Windsor residents when they shop in these communities for decades, really bolstering their general fund and their ability to provide services. I think this really also highlights that past Windsor councils have been good stewards of the taxpayer funding because we have not needed to go to the voters to ask for a local sales tax until now. Next slide. So I really wanted to strike home the point of who pays that sales tax, that when you shop in other communities, as we know from our research, that many Windsor residents spend the majority of their sales tax dollars in other communities, you are paying a higher sales tax rate. You're not paying it when you shop here in Windsor. However, if we did increase a local sales tax rate, people coming into the community would be paying that rate, just as you're paying it in Santa Rosa, just as you're funding the parks and recreation programs in Santa Rosa, others could be helping to fund our Town Green summer concerts, et cetera. I want to hand it over now to Olivia Lehman, our Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you, Tim. So we are here this evening to discuss solutions and alternatives. And Nick laid out the problem and the challenges that we have with the budget. Tim shared the variety of solutions that we have identified. But I'd like to go back a little bit and just reiterate that to meet the $8 million deficit that we are facing without increasing revenue dramatically decreases day-to-day services that we experience in the town. To cut $8 million out of the town budget would substantially change the landscape that we know and love as Windsor. And so we really have identified that while further reductions are possible, we also should be exploring the benefits of what a sales tax can bring us. A sales tax allows us to maintain our roads and our sidewalks and our access to all of our neighborhoods and communities. Right now, Windsor is ranked some of the highest roads in the county, and if transportation and road projects continue to get deferred, that number and that index will decline. And if you've traveled around other roads within the county, that's what we could be considering and facing. Right now, we have a police department that is actively engaged in our communities. We have a school resource officer that everybody knows by first name. And looking at public safety within the community would be different moving forward with further reductions. Likewise, all of our recreation programming and special events would be different and dramatically reduced without additional revenue. So we really do see that the benefit of a sales tax, in addition to all of the changes that we have made and are continuing to make, will really ensure that our small town feel and our small town community that we know and love will still be here. Next slide. And it sort of further shares with the model that we've really been talking about, which is this isn't just a single solution approach. It's like rungs on a ladder. So we focused on budget reductions. We are also looking internally in operational efficiencies. And then council gave staff direction to look and explore at revenue options, which we've really identified as a sales tax measure as being the best and most robust solution to get the town back to a stable and a long-term, fiscally responsible community. Next step. And so we're thankful that you're all here tonight. We're really excited to have this dialogue. We have a series of questions that we are going to discuss in our small tables, but this isn't the only time we're getting out into the community. We will continue to do future town hall meetings similar to tonight. We're scheduling some at the Senior Center. We are going into groups and organizations. We will be reaching out to the mobile home parks. We will be going into the high school and speaking with our students. If there are other organizations who you would like to invite town staff to come and give a similar presentation, we will. We are available and really want to make sure that we use this as an opportunity to educate our community on both the challenges and the solutions, so that when council is faced with the decision later this spring, that they will have a good opportunity to hear from our community and understand what the potential solutions are. And so we've set up a website, townofwindsor.ca.gov/future. That will have all of the information this evening, as well as a lot more FAQs on that website. We encourage you to share the website. There is also a feedback form on that site that will allow you to give additional feedback back to town staff and will be shared with town council. And so this QR code will take you straight to the form, but if you just go to this website, it will give you all the information, including future meetings that are scheduled as they come up. And with that, I will turn it back over to John, Town Manager.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, everybody, for going through the PowerPoint. Appreciate some of you have seen some of this PowerPoint, and we've been trying to better our information. One reason that we're really here tonight is, of course, that we want to educate everybody to the situation that we're in. We want to be as open and transparent as we have ever been in the past. And so that's something that we've set as a goal. That's a commitment that we made to council and a commitment that we made to the public to try to come forward and share information in every avenue and every arena that we get questions in. Are we going to be able to do that entirely tonight? Probably not. But what we will do is try to do our best to answer some questions. And if there's something that we can't get to tonight or we can't get in depth enough, we're going to put it on our bike rack and we're going to talk about it and we're going to reach out to you and we can have a meeting to discuss it, or we can have another meeting like this where we have more focused topics. So with that, we do have some questions coming up. One thing I want to clarify though, when we look at this PowerPoint, is I want to call out right off the top our relationship with the Sonoma County Sheriff. Our partnership with the sheriff is excellent. The service that we receive from the Sonoma County Sheriff is absolutely outstanding. They, just like us, are facing budget issues. And so under the direction of the supervisors, they've changed their model a little bit, and so they have increasing costs just like we do. Every agency, when you look at their pie chart, the biggest slice of the pie chart is police and fire. We are not trying to demonize the sheriff, and I want to make sure that everybody understands. They have been a partner throughout this budget process, and their people at the top and in their fiscal departments have always been open to work with us to try to better the process as we go forward and see how we can keep those costs down. And so I just want to make sure that I call that out. And I want to thank Chief Piccinini as well as Sheriff Ingram for their ongoing support of the Town of Windsor. The other piece that I want to talk about is a little bit about what I said. We're here to educate. We have a long way until council's even going to put this, if they choose to, on the ballot. We want to get you all the information so that the voters, the residents, can decide whether or not this is something that you're interested in investing in. As we laid out, we are not trying to lob bombs and make threats. We are saying this is the fiscal landscape that we have. If the town feels they can help us in a certain capacity, we will be able to continue to provide assets and services in that landscape. We're going to make cuts on our side. We'll have hopefully some additional revenue in the future by new economic development, a potential tax measure, whatever it may be. And we'll combine those two things to continue to do what we do and what you want us to do, and that's give you the best services that we can. So we understand that these are tough times. We understand that everybody is facing the same things you see us facing as a municipality, the same things we see every municipality facing. School districts, everybody. You can't open the paper without somebody having a budget issue right now. We know that's going on at home. It's going on in my house too. So we know that going in, and I just want to make, don't want to make light of that. I want to make sure I call that out so that, we're bringing you this information so you can make the decision, how much do you think you can help the town. So with that, we do want to break into a few groups in a minute, but first we want to go and take some questions. And so what I think we can do is we have another mic, we have two mics, or we can take the mic out, get the question, and then we'll do our best to answer it. And we'll go with Meredith Rainey.
We're getting another mic, but I'll run around for now.
Hi, so listening to all this discussion, and it's all about the future. When we're talking about a sales tax, let's just say, for example, it passes. At what point are you strategizing about restoring some of these deficits? Is it going to go to the deferred maintenance first, restoring the department 10% costs first? Or I'd like to hear about, I don't know if we've gotten that far yet, but I'd like to hear about strategies for once the money starts rolling in, how are we going to implement that to kind of get back on track?
So I'll try to answer a little bit about that. So we're talking about a plan B, right? We have plan B, should there be additional revenue in the future, that we have started. One way we're doing that is we've asked staff, as you know, we work on a biannual budget. So right now we're between the 2 years. So normally staff would not be working hard to produce a new budget this year. Of course, they're looking to the future, and come January of 27, we would start heavy in on that budget process. What we're doing now is creating a budget that would basically show what we would do without any additional revenue. And so that's one way that we're strategizing in the future of how we'll operate. To your point, in that budget process, should we have additional revenue or whatever revenue we have, we'll be bringing those different deferred projects, just as we always do, to council. Hopefully we have new revenue from different areas. Hopefully we've identified by then some different strategies to try to approach those different projects and deferred maintenance, but we are looking at that ahead so that they can prioritize based on feedback from the community during the normal budget process for that 27-29 biennium. We would be able to get that lined up. And that's one thing we want to do tonight is start to, hone down in on what are the priorities in the community, because again, as was mentioned before, tax measure, additional revenue or not, we are going to have to make some cuts, because even at the maximum tax measure, should that be approved or, accepted by the voters, if that's even where council wants to go, that only fills the hole that we've already identified. We still need to look at how we operate and try to trim down without really impacting services, and then we'll be able to use that revenue, hopefully, to kind of build back as we move forward.
the next budget cycle, we should know, 27, 28, 28, 29, we should know if it's capped.
Yes, because the timing, yeah, I didn't speak that. The timing would be November of this year, should it be placed on the ballot. And those types of funds start to roll in when they're approved the following April. And so we would have time there to kind of look at that 27. Remember, we work on a fiscal year budget, so July 1 through June 30, and doing a biennium. That's why I'm saying 27, 29 budget. Did I get the answer? All right, thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us. My wife is a teacher, so the comment about school resource officers really hit home. Why aren't the school resource officers paid for by the school district budget and state funding?
That's a great question. So the school does contribute to the school resource officer. Right now, we have a relationship with the school, and at one time, it was a 50-50 split. We're actually coming up in April on a renewal of that contract, and I actually was talking to the superintendent today that we need to get together and start to look at what that looks like going forward. We're going to let them know that the sheriff has increased expenses, and so we still want to take on a portion of those expenses and also ask the school district to do so. If there's other mechanisms to help fund that resource officer, we certainly want to look at those. The resource officer is a jewel in the community, and it's not something that we want to entertain having to not be able to support. So I hope that answers the question.
Hi, I'm Steve, and when you have a structural deficit, there's two sides to that ledger. There's revenues, and I've heard a lot about revenues, but there's also expenditures. So I'm wondering, are you asking the community where money can be saved, where expenditures could be cut? And out of curiosity, I looked at the term structural deficit, and the first time I could find it mentioned on the Town of Windsor's website was June 2nd, 2021, when the town manager at that time brought up the fact that the town had a structural deficit based on expenditures, operational expenditures. So I'm wondering, where does the expenditures fit into this whole scheme, and what kind of public involvement do you want in that?
I'm going to defer to Nick a little bit for help on this, but if I understand your question, Mr. Gersel, I think the first place that the expenditure piece comes in is when we looked at the current budget in building it, and we dropped by 10% in each department, and we worked with the sheriff to reduce that contract. So we've right there off the top reduced our expenditures. When we're talking about the public input piece, that's the part about the prioritization. That's part of our outreach and ongoing, and on the community survey. We want to be able to bring to council, whether it be to help them put it or not put a measure on the ballot, but also to have that information captured, which we would continue to do through the next budget process, so that we know the priorities of the community and where we should apply those assets, whether they're larger or whether they're current or even less. Does that help answer the question? Structural. Oh, so when you talk about organizational, as we said, we are talking about any reduction in asset or any services we provide to the community. Those also mean that we have to look at staffing, right? And if we're talking about organization, and we're talking about staffing. So what we've done, as was mentioned, is knowing that we were coming up to this problem, beginning early last year, any vacant position where someone has retired or moved on from the organization, we've frozen that position because we don't feel it prudent to fill a position until we know where we're going financially. With that, we have tried to ask each department to look at their org charts and to start to look at other organizations, how they're getting things done, and see if there's a different way that we can provide the same services in less of a model structurally. So that is something that we have started. Now, obviously, we still have a healthy reserve, although we see it dwindling in the future. When we get to that next budget cycle, should we not have additional revenue input or injection, we are definitely going to start having a different conversation, which we are planning for now, and we are also talking to different union groups and other things about what that might look like. But right now, our goal is to continue to provide services without too much impact to the community, other than will be felt from what we cut in the current budget. And then if we can't figure out how to fix this, we have to definitely look at operational cuts in the future in a more severe way. Does that answer?
Thank you, Catherine Adams, Windsor citizen. My main concern right now has to do with twofold: the reserves, which are being impacted, and I wanted to find out more information about how that 25% reserve fund is determined. Is that a policy of the council, or is it a directive from the state that it has to be 25%? And secondly, how did we get and when did we get from 5 police to 2 as we continue to grow and see further development coming in very quickly? It's a real concern of mine personally that we've seen a drastic reduction in public safety funds.
So let me take the second part first. So when we talk about the 3 police officers or sheriff deputies that were sent back to the main, so one of the beauties about working with the sheriff's department is that we have not had to enact a layoff yet. We have reduced our budget, the portion that we pay in the contract, we pay for those services. We reduced that by 3 positions. So 2 of those positions were currently on staff working here, and the 3rd was about to be hired. The first one was the canine officer. We had a canine officer here assigned. I think the dog's name was Benji, and he was here, and we had him in-house. And so the beauty of that was not only could we receive the services in the law enforcement realm that dog and that canine officer presented, we also had that community aspect. We're getting out to the schools, working with people, building on that relationship. That deputy and the dog were transferred back to the main. Now, if we need that dog or the deputy, they can come up in our partnership with the sheriff and give us those services. We don't have that community relation aspect, but we still have that service. And so that seemed like one place to make that reduction. The second one was that we had an administrative sergeant. So administrative sergeant is someone who works with the other sergeants. There's dual shifts, and they help make sure that everything's a continuity of service, everything's going on. That sergeant was, it didn't transfer back because Jeff Toney, who was here, was that sergeant. We transferred another sergeant back, or the sheriff did. I don't do the transferring, I'm the chief. And Jeff Toney became operational sergeant, so to speak. The chief himself has absorbed the duties that 3rd sergeant was helping with, which he can do, but it's taxing and pulls from some of his other chief duties. The 3rd one was that we were in the process of hiring a deputy position that had been vacant for several years to implement a 3rd traffic officer. We've heard from the community that traffic and parking is a huge issue, and the chief and his team have done a great job, in my estimation, over the past year and a half of really ramping that up, but we wanted to take that one step further by adding that in. So we never brought that person in, but we were able to reduce that cost that had been planned for out of the budget. So when you talk about public safety, right now, there is no or should not be any impact to the daily resident on public safety response, because the crew of deputies and the chief and the support we receive from the sheriff is all still there, right in place. And so you said 5, but
The video shows 5 going to 2. I think that's
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just.
It's just a graphical representation.
It's just a.
We have not totally cut except for the canine service and the sergeant that went with that. I just want to
We have not, I guess the easy way to answer it is no deputy that would be on patrol that would respond if you had a call for emergency or a crime has been taken out of the equation yet. In the future, if we can't sustain or find more revenues, that would be a conversation we may have to have. We don't want to have that conversation, and that's why the school resource officer comes up, because not every agency has that. And although we know how valuable that is, that's not a direct response, although that officer does work as a deputy at times.
I apologize. I did ask for 2 questions. My other question had to do with the reserve decision.
Yes.
What percentage of the budget
Yes.
is considered, is that a policy of our council, or is that an administrative requirement?
It is a town council policy that was set many years ago, and it's to reserve 25% of the general fund budget in reserves, in a savings account. And that's been a policy that council made a decision early on. Now, there are other cities that have less of a reserve policy. I also think that over the years, there have been other cities that found themselves in trouble. 2008, for sure. COVID, some got pretty wonky because they did not have that type of reserve. So we have always championed that decision by council and been very happy about it because it gives you that 3 months of savings that they say you should have at home in case a rainy day hits.
So, my name's John Broughton. So Nick mentioned that between 2020 and 2025, salaries and benefits remained at 28%. But that's an interesting base here. That's essentially post-COVID. If you go back to 2018, 2019, which is the last year, normal year, and you compare the number of full-time employees versus what we have now, is it fair to say we have significantly more employees now than we did in 2018, 2019?
I can take that. So we have 18 more employees than we did 10 years ago. And 9 of those work at the wastewater treatment plant and are solely allocated to the water and wastewater funds, which is an enterprise fund, which is separate from the general fund. The other employee positions have come and gone. It's not easy to say pinpoint the one position because we do reorganizations. But when we talk about those 9 headcount that have come to the town in that time, the estimation that we do is about 7 of those equate to full-time employee. And what I mean by that is you need to remember that, myself included. So I'm 50% say general fund, but I also have a portion of salary that's paid from 440 and 410, which is water and wastewater. And so yes, to answer your question about headcount, we have increased by about 9 people over the past few years. Right now, we have 117 full-time employees authorized, and we have 113 full-time employees working because that includes those 4 positions that I've frozen while we work ourselves through this process. Did you have a second part to the question? Did I answer the question? Okay.
Hi.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. March 4th, we are having a presentation brought forward all about employees. It's from the HR department. We've touched on it a little here and there, but we think that's one of those type of bike rack things where we really want to drill down and be as transparent to everybody as we can that's interested. So we'll talk about recruitment, we'll talk about retention, we'll talk about how we set salary and compare to 10 other cities in the region. We'll talk about how we create job descriptions. We'll talk about that employee count, all those things, and we'll answer questions if needed. So March 4th, I would say anybody that's interested in employees, please come to that meeting.
Hi, Mary Ann Bainbridge-Krause, a 30-year resident of Windsor. On the town's website, the deficit is stated as $5.4 million. In today's newspaper, the PD article, you were quoted as stating the deficit was $5.4 million. The cartoon clip just told us it's $8 to $10 million. At sales tax that you're going to raise, if you have a 1% sales tax pass, is going to be $5.5 million. That leaves you $4.5 million short. So how is this going to work?
So let's talk about a couple things. And one thing we've learned along the way, since those quotes were taken quite a while ago, and since the first time that we shared the presentation, was we were mixing metaphors, so to say. At times we were talking about single year, and at times we were talking about biannual. So we now have tried to convert everything to the biannual discussion so that we're looking at the 2-year impact that we foresee coming. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
No, so are you saying that what you stated in the PD this morning is incorrect?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that when that quote was taken, working with the reporter, or if it was taken from the press release, we've been at this a while, we're probably talking about the single year. But I want to ask Nick about this because I might not be understanding your question.
No, I think you answered the question correctly. The numbers that I presented earlier this evening were based on the 2-year biennial budget cycle. So when we talk about a single year deficit, right, it might be 5.4, the next year is 2.6 or whatever equals 8. Does that make sense? So the 5.4 number was probably taken from a 1-year deficit where this is showing a 2-year deficit where the second year is less of a deficit. because of maybe some one-time costs in the first budget year that the second year is not as high of a deficit. But over the 2 years is what we presented tonight. Does that make sense?
Thank you for the
Well, does it make sense?
No.
Yeah, I have a question. How does the new proposed development north of town play into the budget situation? Is it going to create any more revenue? Is it going to be more? Is it going to add more costs? Is it going to wash? How does that work?
Sure, thank you. I believe you're talking about the north of Arata 305 homes. Those 305 homes will create property tax. As Nick pointed out, property tax is our most stable and reliable source of revenue. However, it also gets divided heavily between the state and county, and we get a portion of it. They also will create more residents, more vehicle trips, more demands for our water and wastewater system. Generally, from a macro economic standpoint, housing and the property tax it creates is generally a wash between the new revenue and the amount of services that need to be provided to those new residents.
Are we on time? Okay. Any other questions that can't wait till we talk to you after? A burning desire. We would love to talk a little after. Yes.
So what would the deficit be per year? The sales tax that would come in, you're estimating at about 4.5 million per year. 5.5 million per year. So what's the standing annual deficit? I know you guys do 2 year budgets and they're very efficient, but what is it per year in deficit?
So let me take another crack at that. So as you know, forecasting revenues is crystal ball. Also, we build a budget and we look forward, and with the budget that was approved by the council, should that same budget be taken forward, there would be about $5.4 million deficit in the first year, and then the remainder of that would be in the second year. And as Nick alluded to, I guess what would that be, 2.6? Did I do the math right? So, and as Nick alluded to, budgets usually have more expenditure in the first year because we're encumbering money for large projects, we're looking at one-time expenses, and then sometimes we do try to feather those so that we balance the budget. We also want to be realistic about what can be accomplished in year one, and you can't front load everything into 1 year, so you're going to not start some things till the second year. So I think I've answered your question that there would be about 5.4 the first year from what I understand. We could go back and drill down on that and get that exact answer if anybody's interested in that. I believe it was in the budget presentation when we came to council originally.
Bob Cobb, I have a two-parter. One is regarding revenue. Do we currently receive or pursue federal and state grants? That's the first part. The second part is, what is the cost of putting such an issue on the ballot?
55,000, the clerk's right here. Okay. Yeah.
55. So the answer to the second question first, the cost is about $55,000 that we would pay the county registrar's office to put the measure on the ballot. And yes, the town actively pursues federal and state grants. Just had a meeting with community development to discuss how we're going to implement these programs. And I think $650,000 grant for community development that will be used to program the construction of ADUs. It's easy to say, well, let's just get grants to fix the problem, right? The grant industry has changed significantly over the last years, and as great of a community as Windsor is, we lack competitiveness in a lot of the grant realms because of the demographics. And so to answer the question, yes, we're constantly pursuing federal and state grants. It's not as easy as going, hey, state, or hey, Fed, will you pay for 3 police officers? They say no.
Okay, I really want to give us time to go into some small groups and have some discussion. And so we're going to have some questions that'll come up on the screen. You'll also have them on a paper, and a staff member will come out to each table and try to facilitate the conversation, or a council member if they're there and feels like they would like to. really these questions are, and I'll read them out loud so you kind of know what's coming, but you also have them on the table. Sorry. Lived experience of services. In your day-to-day life in Windsor, where do you most clearly see town general fund services working well, and where do you notice strain or gaps? Second one's about community priorities. This is where we want to get input. When you think about Windsor's future, what services, investments, and community assets feel most important, and understanding the challenge. After hearing the budget overview, what aspects of the financial situation feel clear, and what aspects still are confusing, or do you think are incomplete, and we can do better in helping educate you? And that would be?
Do we want to combine some groups?
Yeah, I think if we could get the tables filled out, so maybe have 4 or at least 5 people at each table, that might help us kind of reduce the tables. Yeah. And we know it's not a, but we're going to try to keep a timer and about 5 minutes per question so we can have time at the end to talk about it. To maybe think about doing that soon. And we'll change it up on the slide. What's that? Is it on that one? No. Hey, Irene.
We're going to do a brief report out.
What is the town spend on community events?
You put me on the spot. Let me break it down.
Okay, I think we're ready for some report outs. And I think the best way we should try to do this, when you're ready, is we'll go table to table and we'll talk about one question at a time. So we should probably start with question 1. And what I'll ask is if you could just briefly report out. We have 8 tables. We have 3 questions. That's going to put us way over time, but we're going to power through. And so what we'll try to do is we have Tim, we have Lauren, we have other staff. We're recording. We're going to try to capture themes that we're hearing from all the tables to make sure we address those in the future. And we're going to start right here with Commissioner Tim.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So
and if we could give Tim a little bit of attention, that would be great.
Okay.
So we're going to report out on question 1.
Question 1, here we go. This is the power table, and we decided things were doing well. Town green events, Parks and Rec program, the senior center, reduction in loud cars. More family opportunities and public safety were all things that have been going on, doing well. Places where we see some strain and some gaps include park maintenance, trash/rodents at the town green, traffic enforcement, creekside litter and maintenance, and general road maintenance issues.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go right here. Mayor, do you have your spokesperson? Oh, you've got one. Oh, look at that.
A lot of the same things. Clean streets are working well. Police department, appreciate them. Town green, concerts, movies. Just wondering if somehow we could find new funding for those so we can keep those. Strain, local roads, specifically Shiloh, is horrific. I drive a school bus and I do that corner 3 times a day and it's terrible. And then also traffic around new construction. So that's question 1.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Leap, do you want to share top things that town's doing well and areas of strain?
Well, hi there. So what happened to us is that just about everything we talked about, it was about 50-50 at the table. So a few people just thought concerts were a complete waste of money. And then other people at the table said the concerts are the greatest things that Windsor has. So that's a pretty tough item. You know what? I'm going to need these glasses to see what I wrote here. And questions came up like how much money are we spending on events, community events all around town, and it was great because Olivia came over and said, after a little while, about $120,000. So what I pointed out to them is that if you cut $120,000, you can pay for perhaps maybe 100 or 200 yards worth of fixing up old red.
the highway or the road. So, the numbers are really out of whack. And then another very important thing that we're more or less not doing well is fixing up all the roads. And we talked about how expensive that is to do. And if we don't have the money, we can't do that. So it came up that Grand Fondo brings a lot of money into the town. So that was a very good comment. And I think that's all I have on question 1. Did I miss anything? No? Okay.
Great, thank you. This table over here?
So this table right here came up with services that are working well. It's all public services, basically streetscapes, parks, roads, water, sewage, everything under public services to include law enforcement. They're not seeing crime, but they're also not seeing the police. So that's kind of a thing that I'm going to have to assess as we move on.
Thank you. Next table?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Question 1 on there is definitely the streets are doing pretty good, but we know that's going to be an issue in the future. So that's something that we definitely need to take a look at. We know Shiloh's a mess. The noise control over town is doing pretty good. Of course, we got the US 101 that's a great provider of noise. Can't change that one. But positive, got to experience that this week. I had to call the street department about some issues over in the Windsor Creek Elementary area, and they responded very quickly to taking off some non-gang graffiti at a point on Bell Road by the SMART train. That worked out really well, and we're also on a list to clean up a couple other areas over there for us. So the response from the town has been really well, calling the 838-1000 number. There was some quick response from that person answering the phone, and then got me to the right department. And not having a voicemail situation was great. It was a live body, be able to talk to, and so that's always well. So don't cut that service, please. The other thing, as far as the parks, the timely cleanup of the parks is doing pretty well, and closing and locking them at night is a perfect thing. And thanks again for having a skate park and some of the other sports field. One of the things that's coming down the line for our community for sure is flag football. It's been sanctioned by the high schools, and that's becoming very popular in our middle school and high school, but that's gonna flow into our parks as well. So it's a good sport for boys and girls, so look out for that. And also, we know that some of the other things that were coming around with that community pool at Kaiser, we've seen the plans for that. It's a good thing. But one thing that's obviously going to come into our community, and it is happening now, is the high density, and how do we get that police as well as our other services that will tax those areas. Some of us have dealt with those type of communities throughout our lives, and stand by, everyone. It's going to be interesting. It's going to change the town, so be ready for it. And then also, one more thing is, how do we pivot with all these things that are happening? This is the first part right here. Us in the room coming here and being concerned. So once we get done with this tonight, make sure you're talking to your neighbors, right? Let them know.
Thank you. All right, next group over here.
Good evening. So our strains, which maybe we focused on more strains than successes, but environmental, including trash and water quality issues, police response time to minor issues like vandalism, the parking, Shiloh, and the impact of affordable housing on, not having enough parking in their own facility and parking on the streets. Successes, the town green, it's, is the gem of our community, and then the concerts and movies that we have there to support our community.
Thank you very much. Right here in the middle.
So our group thought that the town services are generally working well. We came up with a couple of gaps. One of them was, once upon a time, there used to be paid children activities and Where to Gym, like summer camps and parties, and those don't seem to be around very much, if at all. And the other thing was, if talking about gaps, there are missing sidewalks in different places in the town, a very significant gap. But generally, we thought things were working well.
Thank you. let's see. I can take your, over here in the corner.
Okay. So we had a very exciting conversations over here, but staying directly on topic was maybe not our strength. But so what we did want to see, what this group wanted to see more of is what kind of economic development is happening here in town, and how that is being successful. And so are we seeing the economic development that we really like to see in town, which would ultimately bring in more revenues for the town. And then I think it was hard for this group to really say what services were more important than other ones without having a cost-benefit analysis. So it's kind of what this group over here said, what JB's group said was, well, if we don't know how much the concerts cost overall, how can we say the concerts aren't as important as, say, a repairing of the roads? And so, to be able to actually look and see, we kind of looked at it as like, well, if you have I'll use your analogy, Steve, like if I have a channel that's not really that expensive, but I'm not watching it on my, cable subscription, well, is it that big of a deal, or do I want to completely get rid of it based on, do I have something I'm not really using, but it's super expensive? So where is the cost benefit analysis across the board so that we can make better informed decisions on those services?
Great, thank you very much. I want to be respectful of time. It's about 7 o'clock. We'd like to go through and do the same thing for questions 2 and 3. We were hoping to maybe combine 2 and 3. The third one is basically, what information did you not receive this evening that we still need to fill into this presentation, or what feels confusing? Number 2, which Lauren's going to put up on the screen. When you think about Windsor's future, what general fund services, investments, or community assets feel the most to protect or strengthen, and why? So if, as your group, we'll maybe start there and work our way back around. So Vice Mayor Potter.
Okay, again, on this, I'm going to try to answer this question with what we discussed. But what we discussed was that they'd like to have more information on some other options, such as what would it look like if instead of a sales tax measure, there was a bond specifically for roads, so that now roads are paid for with a bond, and then that unencumbers that money in our general fund for other options. Okay, so that was one thing that was thrown out, but that roads are really important. Also, discussion, and they'd like to have some discussion and understanding of like a sunset on a tax measure to hold the town accountable to actually fixing our structural deficit. So if we get 15 years of a tax measure, then in 15 years, what does that look like? And did the council work with staff to actually correct some of the issues we have structurally, and that money isn't just being spent out of the general fund if it's able to be put in there. And so that would, in 15 years, or 10 years, whatever sunset would look like, would hold the town accountable to actual changes and not just in perpetuity have this additional funding. And just some feedback real quick for the online survey. If they're asking for some just boxes where we can fill in so that you're not limited to what some of the options are, but just the actual feedback can be given specifically to the town.
Great, thank you. Okay. Table here in the middle.
So for number two, we thought in protecting trees and waterways in the town is very important. And the other thing we thought worth definitely strengthening is bike and pedestrian connectivity. The town talks about bikes and pedestrian paths and doesn't seem to execute on the capital project plans that have been around for a while. But it's also a safety issue. If we want more people to use bikes and to walk, then we need to build the connectivity and make sure that the safety is in place. For number 3, what we'd like to see, or some of us would like to see as an appendix, if nothing else, is a breakout of general fund expenses by year, by major program. So what did the police cost in 2018, 2019, 2020 through 2025? What was the revenues by type each of those years, so we can see why they took a nosedive just in the last year. And with the focus being on the general fund, the moment you start lumping in water and waste and all the other special funds that pay for themselves, you really dilute the critical thing, which is what is happening in the general fund.
Thank you very much. All right.
Okay, so for number 2, we just did a 1, 2, 3 priority. So police and safety came as the most important aspect of the general fund. Roads and streets and maintaining our town buildings and facilities as number 3. And then, I don't know, we didn't really vet through question number 3 too carefully. I did provide a suggestion to help people understand the 2-year budget and the deficit being different between the 2 years, maybe coming up with a visual. I know some people are visual learners, especially when it's numbers and math, so they could see it to better understand it.
Great, thank you. Back here.
Yeah, on question 2 and 3, 2 is to make sure that some of these visions that we have for the parks for our community, especially with our younger population, they need places to go. It's very limited right now. We really need to take a look at that seriously, and there are some good plans in the works, so we're hopeful for that, looking for the funding one way or another. The other thing is how do we pivot, for question 3, how do we pivot from what has happened to the possibility, if we do get the sales tax going, seriously breaking down that money as the town manager was talking about, and really prioritizing these things for success as opposed to just throwing money at something and not having the results that we need.
Thank you.
All right, so this table back here was safety, town events, and infrastructure. The 3 things that make this town so great and why everybody continues to come here. If we continue those 3 things, that's going to keep our property values up, which is one of the big things where we get some of that, not guaranteed money, but some of the best funding that the town has. What wasn't clear was the 5%, is it 5.5, 2.6 over the 1 year or the 2 year, and if it's 8 million or if it's 5.5 that we're getting back from the infrastructure, from the tax. So if we can just try to clear that up moving forward. One of the things was the insurance. As the insurance costs have gone up, are we as a town doing the best thing we can to look at those and try to reduce those insurance costs? And then there was one other one from someone from my table. Help me out on the last one.
Sales tax, like, what's the division of the pie? Like, it's currently 22.8.
Yeah, so for the overall pie chart that is up there for the fund, the 22.8, and then if we did receive the tax measure, how would that affect the overall percentage for the pie chart?
All right, Councilmember Lee.
Well, it was pretty tough over here. We were we were going as fast as we could here, and I'm looking at the notes, which were compiled by one person, I think, writing on her own. But basically, I think one of the major things that came up was, of course, as you've heard so many times, infrastructure and roads, and let's make sure that we take care of them. We all know those are expensive. Safety on the roads with respect to bicycles, huh? Right? Safety in general on the roads, okay. What else? Those are the main things I heard, and well, the water's taken care of by the water district, and they're in pretty good shape right at the moment. So, did I miss something? Because I think it was infrastructure, and watch out for the concerts, but that was only in one person, so I can't generalize for that. Parks and open space, keeping those up. Olivia, you're on.
All right, thank you. Right here.
So number 2 for us was really trying to protect our small town feel of Windsor. And that's kind of an important thing for us. And then my question too goes with that is, why are we doing all this building if it's just a wash? Because that's not going to give us a small town feel if we're doing all this massive building. So all the new homes being built over here are going to be required by the state. Yeah. So that just brings everything up more, right? Interesting.
So we have our community services director here, and I will finish these questions, and then I think he could probably give, for those that are interested on the housing, we could stick around and he could answer housing specific questions.
And then just clarify the police positions was question number 3 about are they coming back? Are they not coming back? What are they? All that stuff. We had a question, where is COVID 6.5 million? Where was that spent? What was that used for? And then my question was when I saw the chart just go straight down, it's like, why was there no projected or economic growth at all? It was just straight down. Anyway, and then I don't know what ERP software money is, but that was the question we had.
Excellent. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It is the computer software program that basically runs all of our town businesses and operations. So there's your simple answer. You're welcome.
Okay. Here we go real quickly. We have most important things to protect and why. Roads, they're like teeth. Take care of them now because it gets more expensive later. So that's one of the biggest issues we have, and roads includes the bike lanes and the connectivity and things like that. Town facilities are not good. We know this because this table almost stabbed Deb and I. And only one of us is smart enough to wear a mask in here because of the asbestos we're breathing. So the buildings here suck, and I'm just going to go on record and say that. Public safety, though, has been good, and the community programming and events, people want to keep that going in. So things that are confusing, what's our sustainable long-term solutions to the structural deficit, which I think this group over here brought up as well. After the cuts, what remains? So if we cut stuff like they were talking about, what clearly will be left if we have to do that? If this doesn't pass, what specifically happens? So what's the opportunity cost or the unopportunity cost there? And then what are other options, whether a higher sales tax, a TOT, a blend? I heard bonds over there as well. So what other things are there? TOT is hotel tax. So the best kind of tax because you don't pay it. And then the one thing we might want to get clear, or that might be clear, is what actual amount the deficit is, which it sounds like it's confusing with the 2-year budget versus 1 year. So just get that clear. That's our report.
Thank you so much. So we really want to be respectful of your time. This has really been invaluable. For those who are on a tight timeline, we just want to thank you. We encourage you to go to the town's website with townofwindsor.ca.gov/future will take you directly to this page.